Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, December 6th. Hard to believe it's December. The holidays are upon us. Although if you look outside, it feels like December. Although last night it felt like summer. So welcome to Indiana if you're from around here. I'm Mayor Chris Jenson. It's such an honor to once again be with you on Mental Health Monday here. I believe this is probably one of the times of the year that we need mental health, focus on mental health more than anything, because there is so much going on. Today, we're going to dive into a really heavy topic, but one that I think is incredibly prevalent, one that is in everyone's life. It's going to be involving grief around the holidays and how we process that. We have an awesome special guest, not just Kristen Boice, another awesome special guest, Larissa Warren with Brooks Place here today. I'll let her introduce herself here in a little bit, but we're just honored to have you with us here this morning as we tackle hard topics. Kristen, you know I've said from day one, we're going to lean in to all the hard things. And so, because I think that's how we get through this together. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about grief and processing grief, especially around the holidays. But before we get started, let's do as we always do, and I'll let my good friend Kristen Boice, the owner of Pathways to Healing Counseling, lead us through a little square breathing. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jenson. Good morning, Larissa. I am thrilled you're joining us today on this important topic.
Thrilled to be here.
Yes, thank you. And the background is just
so much color, so much happiness.
You are loved. Back. Okay, so we're going to do our breathing. So this is something I invite everybody to do every hour. So you're going to do 5 to 6 breaths minimum. This is to help regulate your nervous system, to come back to center, to come back to the present moment, not be in the future, not be in the past. Come right here, right now. So we're going to start by putting our feet on the floor. We're going to inhale through our nose for 4. We're going to hold for 4. And we're going to slowly exhale out our mouths like you're cooling soup or cooling a cookie for 8. So let's do it together. Press your feet into the ground. Nice big deep inhale. And release. Just checking in, noticing the difference before you started. We're going to do one more together, pressing into your feet, big deep inhale. And release. This is how I start every single counseling session I have with every single client. And then I check in each week and I say, how's the breathing going? And it's funny to hear Larissa was sharing how it's helped her even, during her daily life, the breathing. Mm-hmm. So I love it so much. Yeah.
So simple. If you're not breathing, I can't, we all know what the alternative is. So it sounds so simple, but it's so important. So a few housekeeping items before we take off here. We're so fortunate, Kristen. We have like several thousand viewers throughout the next couple of weeks, which is awesome. Every single show. If anyone's watching live today, feel free to send us a note, say hi. I guarantee you, Larissa has some champions that are watching here this morning. So make sure you say hi to Larissa and cheer her on as she's going through this conversation with us this morning. If you have any questions, of course, ask those. We'll address them either live on the show or we'll follow up with you later. This is for you, not necessarily for us. It's for you here today. So feel free to come in. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about grief. Grief is a heavy topic, but it's something that everyone faces. And it doesn't just involve death. Grief can involve a lot of things. Kristen's talked a lot about COVID and how grief has shown up in COVID settings here as we grieve maybe regularity, as we grieve our normal behaviors. Last year we grieved the lack of holiday celebrations. So, but I know my good friend Larissa, who is a Noblesville resident, and her husband are incredibly tied to Noblesville. So I appreciate that. Is going to talk to us a little bit more specifically about grief. Brooks Place, Larissa, I'll let you kind of tee up what Brooks Place is. I know I've spoke openly before. I lost a parent at a very, very young age. I so wish Brooks Place was around during that time. It would have been incredibly beneficial to me. And I have referred then friends who have lost spouses or significant others to Brooks Place now, because it's a huge part of our healing, especially for young kids here today. So Larissa, if you want to take it there and give us a little overview on Brooks Place, and Kristen, if you want to dive in and talk a little bit about grief, we can go from there.
Sure. Well, Brooks Place was founded in 1999. And we have, since that time, we have provided services to well over 23,000 individuals in Central Indiana. And we provide that ongoing support for children who are grieving the death of a loved one. We have ongoing support groups that are peer-based, where kids, teens, young adults are placed in groups based on their age. That's where that healing happens, and sharing those common stories of their loved one who died and their experiences. We have therapy services, that's one-on-one counseling with licensed mental health professionals. We have an outreach program where we kind of take Brooks Place on the road, because we know that not everyone can come to us. So we try to break down as many barriers as we can and take it to them in many underserved communities. And we have a community education program too, where we do things such as this Facebook Live, and then all the way up to our clinical director will do full day workshops for licensed professionals.
Awesome. So Brooks Place is impacting people all around Central Indiana, and
Yes.
just a huge resource. You see them pop up all the time now. And so one of the big messages today, that if you know somebody in this situation, or you'll know some more as we go through life, know that Brooks Place is there to be a resource. So
That's right.
Kristen, if I can pivot to you a little bit to talk a little bit about what grief looks like in different people, and then maybe we can engage kind of a conversation back and forth about plans of attack going forward and how to manage them.
I think the first thing I want to say about grief is there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
So many clients will come in and say, am I doing this right? Should I be over? I feel like I should be over this by now. And I said, there's no timeline for grief.
Right. No.
And are there anything else you would add to that, Larissa?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Either for the griever themselves to learn that, or people around the grievers to understand that. I've had situations where someone said, they really should be better. Well, they're not someone to be fixed. You don't fix grief. Grief is what it is, and it's different for everyone. And I know from my own experience, Mayor Jenson, you mentioned that you experienced the death of your mom at a young age. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's right. Mom's watching. I guarantee it. So
Sorry. Dad. Sorry. I must have been thinking too much about what I was going to say later. I wasn't listening real well. But anyway, I had a sister who died well over 30 years ago. And there are moments that it hits me like a ton of bricks, right? It just, it's always, grief is ever present.
I think that's an important thing to note as we enter the holidays, especially people that are like, it happened so long ago. Why do I still feel sad? Why did memory or this song or this ornament bring up, or this candle, what that looks like for you, bring that back up? And I said, because you loved them that much, because you missed them, you long for connection with them. And it's okay. And it's okay to name it. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to say their name or express what's going on. What are some of, I hear a lot about the things people say, we mean well, we have good intentions. When someone has suffered a loss or gone through a loss, we don't know what to say or do. Can you help us? What are some of the do's and don'ts when walking through grief? What to say, what not to say?
Yeah, that's our number one question that we get asked all the time is, I don't know what to say, or tell me what to say or what to do. So more importantly, what shouldn't you say? So, those platitudes of they're in a better place, everything happens for a reason, that is just so not helpful at all. Telling a griever to be strong, well, maybe I don't want to be strong right now. So any of those feelings that they are having, they are okay to have them, and it's okay to not be okay. We tell a lot of people that it's okay to not be okay. So those are some things that we just definitely should not do. Things that are helpful is to acknowledge that that person has died and that that person was significant to them. What an honor it is for someone to hear their loved one's name and for them to be asked, I'm wondering, or, to say, I remember meeting your dad one time and we had this interaction. Boy, I just wish I maybe would have had some more experiences with him, and just open that up for them to share with you. We hear quite often that one of their fears is that their loved one will be forgotten. And so say the name, give them that opportunity to share their story of their loved one.
Yeah, I think that's people are afraid. I hear this a lot. I'm going to stir something up from them. I'm going to upset them. I'm going to bring up something that they don't want to talk about.
Right. And believe me, their loved one, it's on their mind all the time, right? They're thinking about that person, but you offering the opportunity for them to talk, believe me, they will not forget that. That will make them feel very special. And at the same time, it's okay to say, I don't really know what to say right now. I really don't, but I care about you. What an honor and a gift that is to that person, just to let them know that I really care about you.
Yeah, I have people that have walked through some pretty traumatic grief, and people just show up and they're like, I'm just here. I'm here. Just here. If you need me to sit here and just sit here, if you need me to do your laundry, I'll do your laundry. I'm just here. I'm just here. Just kind of show up.
Right.
And that phrase of just showing up in the midst of it, looked like you were going to say something, Mayor Jenson.
Yeah, I was just going to comment because I feel I go to a lot of funerals, and that sounds odd, but I there's just a lot of people that I've within the community that I try to go to. I'm pretty good, not good at it. I don't get ever good at it, but I am not super uncomfortable going. But there's a lot of folks that's not their strength, right? That's and there's some folks I've even heard of like, well, I'm just not going to say anything, or if I run into so and so who's lost somebody, I don't need to bring it up. They don't need, I don't want to. To your point, I don't want to bring it up and stir them up. And so then we get in this weird, awkward, like, hey, I know that person's sister just died, but I'm just going to say happy Tuesday and move on, which I think actually is probably more awkward than just addressing. So maybe some coaching around that for those of us that aren't good at grief or that just, because it's a life thing. It's going to happen. It's going to happen more as you get older, with, those type of situations. So some guidance there might be really helpful.
Yeah. Again, I think it's just acknowledging what happened. And, and by doing that, that opens it up for them to share, but, and then to stay quiet, right? Like, don't talk too much, stay quiet, give them that space. And then if they, don't go on that path, but if they say, well, hey, how about that Colts game yesterday? Shutout of, who'd we play? The Texans, right? Yeah. Then that's your cue that they don't want to talk about that right now, but they will appreciate that you acknowledged their pain and what has happened in their family. Yeah.
Kristen, could you talk a little bit about, obviously the holiday time is a trigger point for a lot of people, how maybe we address that within our family settings where there maybe is already other layers of tension this time of year, and just other, we talked about stress around the holidays a few weeks ago and family dynamics, and then you might throw grief on top of that, and it's all of a sudden just pile it on. Can you talk about why that's significant this time of year and maybe how we address that within our family settings?
Absolutely. When we think about the holidays, we think of family. It kind of goes, they're like synonymous somehow, right? They've gotten married together. We think this is time we've taken off work, or maybe we are at work, but we come together as a family. And so anytime we think of the holidays, typically, now not everybody had a healthy family system. Even then, we think of family, and we have memories that are made. We have associations that are made. So we have meals, And those meals, like we have traditions, and they have associations on memories with family members, maybe the significant emotion that was connected to that experience with that loved one or with the family system. And so when we experience a death, we experience a loss, and now we have those associations connected to our family traditions, it stirs up sadness. It stirs up a longing. It stirs up nostalgia. And nostalgia is that longing for how it used to be, the longing for that connection, that longing for that sense of family time together. And it might not have been all wonderful. So people, it doesn't have to look like, you know, the traditional family where we're sitting around singing, you know, Christmas songs around a Christmas tree. We still have grief regardless of that relationship. Now, sometimes people have guilt because they don't have a whole lot of grief for someone they've lost, and that's okay too. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. So the holidays will stir up a lot of associations and memories with those traditions. And so as we go into the holidays and we have experienced a loss, giving the permission slip, first we have to work around our own grief. Because if we're not going to give the permission to other people to have that grief. We're going to want to not talk about it. And that's one of the most, probably, I would say, that keeps the trauma alive is when we don't talk about it, when we can't name the person, when we can't acknowledge it. So acknowledging it, to Larissa, to your point, is so significant in terms of family system. So it's dealing with your own unprocessed grief has to be tended to, naming it, and then giving permission to other people to have their own grief process that may look completely different than yours.
Right.
Larissa, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, absolutely. And, you know, if you, as you're going into that holiday season, you know, maybe take some time to really kind of process those things that you're thinking about, things that you might want to consider, you know, people that you might see, some of the traditions that you might have, events, you know, what are some of those things that you might struggle with this year? Write them down and then look at that and then consider making a plan around that. You know, what would it look like if I made just some little changes to those things? You know, what if I don't wait for someone to bring up my loved one, but I bring them up in the conversation first, you know, kind of being that proactive. If it's something around an event, maybe I decide that this year I'm not going to go, and that's okay. Or maybe I go early, maybe I go late, but just kind of consider what some alternatives can be around, you know, making that plan to kind of help you get through those things. And to just realize that all of those feelings that you're having, they are all perfectly normal and they are okay. And that you just need to do what you need to do to help you get through it.
And I was going to add one more piece that you mentioned that I think is really important, that sometimes, depending on the loss, the holidays is something we have to, like to your point, change up. So we might need to go someplace else. We might need to travel rather than do what we've always done.
Right.
And giving yourself that permission, because the guilt and shame was to tell you, well, I should do what we've always done. Well, they're going to be upset. Or what if I disrupt the family dynamics by not doing the same thing?
Right.
Like, it's okay. You're the one that has to give yourself that permission to make it different. Now, if we're in a family system, we can talk about that.
Right.
How do you feel if we went south for the holiday, or for what holiday you're celebrating? Or, well, how would you feel about that? What does that bring up for you? So we can all have a voice in it, and not everyone might agree. So that's when we have to kind of weigh what's the best emotionally for the whole.
That's right. And include the children in those discussions. You know, they, believe me, they will have an opinion and they will tell you if you ask. So yes, be sure to include them.
And that's what I wanted to kind of pivot to and ask you, Larissa, kind of in your wheelhouse here with Brooks Place, in terms of kids and grief. I'm a parent. You guys are both parents. I'm making it up most days as I go along, as I think every parent is as well. And, but if you're a parent dealing with whether it could be grief in your own family, or you may be parent of kids who there was a situation in Noblesville where a few weeks ago a father passed away, had young kids, so our kids are friends with that kid, how do we talk to our kids this time of year about grief, and how do we help them process that? I know there's a lot of parents that watch this. That's a huge thing. We want to try to get it right. Every parent does. Maybe some coaching around that, Larissa, would be helpful.
Yeah. Again, just giving them the opportunity to talk about that, if that, if they knew that person, giving them an opportunity to share their memory of that person or experiences that they've had, and just really take the cues from them, and don't assume that they what they're going to say, or that they feel a certain way about it. Kind of use a lot of reflection tools, so I heard you say X, kind of repeating back what they said so that you're not putting your own spin on what you think they said. And that will help you guide that conversation with them. And they'll let you know when they're done with that conversation too, because they'll be like, okay, well, now it's time to go, do whatever. So.
And I think just as important too, and maybe Kristen and Larissa both can answer this, what not to do. We've talked, Kristen, you and I have talked a lot about kind of suppressing those feelings of like, oh, you're fine, rub dirt on it, and work through, those type of things, which totally guilty all the time. Working on that, work in progress. So, around grief, what do we not do as parents? What should we not be doing?
Yeah. I think, shutting down any kind of conversation because you're uncomfortable with it. That's, not a great thing to do. Just explore what it is that they are saying and what they're trying to say to you. And just, we don't want them to learn that grief is kind of a taboo subject, that it should be something that we all feel very open in talking about. I think, that might be one of the blessings that COVID has brought us, is that there has been more awareness about just mental health overall and about grief overall. One of you said it earlier, that, we have been living a collective grief this last year and a half, or, however long it's been, whether it's been a loss of job or, the getting together with family, friends, party, whatever it is, travel. And so that's been just a really great blessing that that conversation is a little more ongoing. And I hope that continues, and that we all become just a little more savvy and a little more educated when it comes to mental health and grief.
Yeah. Kristen, do you want to maybe touch on kind of from I hate to use the word clinical, but from your setting, what you're seeing, what trigger points right now you're seeing coming through your doors, or to you virtually around grief? What are people most faced with right now? I sometimes think it's helpful to hear from your perspective, like, oh, other people in the world have this issue going on too, so I wonder if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think we are in the most grief-stricken time, one of the most grief-stricken times that we've ever been in, because of all the variations of loss that we've had, and naming that, because there's so much shame and there's something wrong with me. And what I often tell kids, I've seen this in a lot of, I'm seeing it across the board, teens absolutely are struggling with grief and loss. And then if you add losing a person on top of that, there is exponential, what we would call trauma on top of that. Because what I ask children, I love to tell parents to ask their children is, what are you afraid of? Because oftentimes if they've lost a loved one, they're afraid their other parent might die. They're afraid something bad's going to happen. They're afraid something's bad's going to happen to them or their pet or insert person that they love and care about. And so they're going, it stirs up a lot of fears. It stirs up a a lot of fears for children, and naming those fears, talking about those fears, normalizing those fears are really important. And that's important right now, conversation to have across the board with your children. What are they afraid of? What do they feel sad about? And if we don't start naming emotions, it's so we're keeping us in a freeze response. It's like fight, flight, or freeze. Some people are flyers and they just kind of avoid. Some people are, and this is based on our childhood conditioning or experiences a lot of times. Some are fighters, some are freezers, and fawn is the fourth one. Fawn is pleasers. And we see often in grief, you're going to see some of those come back up. You're going to see fight, flight, freeze, or fawn come up. And like if they're trying to caretake a parent in their grief, you're going to see them really trying to do a good job in their grief. They're going to be strong for their parent and really giving them full permission to let them have their own experience is so important. And the other thing I want to mention is when we say you're so strong to somebody, we say that a lot to grievers. You're so strong. And we mean well. We mean so well. We mean to acknowledge the person's internal strength and wow, how they're coping with it. And we can't imagine going through that. And what sometimes the griever hears is, I've got to be strong. I show them that I'm struggling or that I feel like I'm barely making it 1 second at a time. We don't. And so that's another thing I would watch, not saying that to someone, even though our intentions are so pure. Were you going to add on to that, Larissa?
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that.
And isn't it sometimes when you're saying you're so strong or be strong, isn't that kind of projecting our own thoughts around like, oh, I don't think I could ever handle that. So I'm really glad you're going through it because I couldn't do what you're doing, which really ends up being more about you.
Yes, because you're like, I can't even imagine going through what you're going through. Wow, you're doing so much.
Exactly. Like this person didn't opt to go through this. So, it's.
Right.
Yeah. And we hear that a lot. You'll hear that a lot. Be strong. You're strong. And I feel like it's something, if we can really talk about that and name that and how that might land for someone else, it's helpful because I didn't think about it that way. Oh, I haven't even thought about it in that way. That's what we're talking about in grief. Like if we can clear the deck on what we think grief should look like and just walk alongside someone. So if you're trying to fix somebody in their grief, ask yourself, am I trying to fix it because I'm uncomfortable or I feel overwhelmed that I don't know what to do? Ask yourself, are you walking alongside? Very different when that looks like I'm just going to say what's going on for you? How are you feeling today? Today sucks. I don't even want to be here. And you're like, let me make them feel better and just go, oh yeah, I could see that. It's gut wrenching. It's like a gut punch. And they're like, yes, we're just walking alongside them with empathy.
That's right. That's right.
So I wanted to get to a quick question. Jenna Stewart, a good friend of mine, was asking. First of all, she was talking about Meg Hazelrig is an awesome Pilates instructor. She uses Pilates for a lot of her, even to process different things. I love exercise. I talked a lot about this on this show, how important it is for me. But she also asked a question, Kristen, about EMDR, using that for grief, and then can EMDR be done without a therapist? Because obviously not everyone has access to therapy. So I thought I would direct that right to you.
Great question. I love this question. So EMDR, for those that don't know, is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's been around over 35 years. It absolutely, unequivocally can be used for grief, and you need an EMDR therapist for that. So a trained specialist. And what EMDR does is we're working on those intense memories, body sensations, smells, sights, pictures, and we're reprocessing that so the intensity goes way down. We might be at a 10. If we had a traumatic loss, we can bring that down. You're still going to have the memories. They're just not going to be as intense. So they're not running you. You are being able to manage them. So that's what a little summary of EMDR, very high level summary. Excellent question. Highly recommend EMDR for grief.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. Before we go, Larissa, you want to let us know how to get in touch with Brooks Place if somebody needs to reach out?
Yes, absolutely. You can go right to our website, brooksplace.org. Brooks has an E in there, brooksplace.org. lots of information right on there, or you can just give us a call, 317-705-9650.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Larissa. You are an absolute godsend today to help us gather and walk through this conversation. So nice to have somebody from Brooks Place, a local person as well, talk about your experience and how to walk through this. Kristen Boice, you're always great. I just genuinely appreciate all that you do. Final note: if I'm in crisis right now, this is how we always leave the show. Kristen, where do I turn?
Please don't walk it alone. Call 1-800-273-TALK. It's free, available 24/7. Also, you can text 741-741 any time of day. You can always head to St. Vincent Stress Center if you're here locally, or Community North, Eskenazi downtown. There's many resources to help you to not feel alone in your pain. Please don't try to walk it alone. If you need help, there are resources available. Prevail, if you're in a domestic violence situation, has a 24-hour hotline, 317-776-3472. You matter, you're important, and you are worthy and deserve to work through that pain.
Absolutely. Well, again, Larissa, thank you to you in Brooks Place. Kristen Boice, you're awesome. And we will see everybody back here in 2 weeks, the week of Christmas. What better week than to dive through and talk a little bit more about our mental health. So stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks again, everybody.
Bye-bye.